The season is halfway finished, and there were some big moments for the Devils so far. What were they on my end? We have a lot to talk about in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credentialed media member, Trey Matthews. So 41 games are now officially in the books for New Jersey Devils, so the season is halfway done. Now, I saw a recent article put out there by Ryan Novosinski of NJ.com, and he basically talked about his 9 big moments so far this year, and I figured maybe I'll do something similar. So a lot has happened throughout the course of the year. The Devils are second in the Metropolitan Division. They're trying to get back into the playoffs. The last time they appeared in the playoffs was back in 2018, but they were dealt with ease by the Tampa Bay Lightning in 5 games. The last time that they were actually competitive was back in 2012 when they lost in the Stanley Cup Finals to the LA Kings. So it's been a while since the Devils have been relevant in the playoffs. So hopefully this is our year, but it's just going to be a sprint dash to the finish for the Devils. And right now, it seems like they're getting hot at the right possible time, especially with the Metro being tight. So let's get into my big moments so far. 41 games completed for the New Jersey Devils. So some honorable mentions: Vitek Vanacek and his overall big production in between the pipes. The BMW line adding some depth this season and just surprising a lot of people in terms of just racking up the points and being big energizers. And we know how dearly missed Nathan Bastian is ever since he got injured with that shoulder issue. And the third and final honorable mention is the Rangers game that happened on January 7th, so just a few days ago. And I just figured for the honorable mentions is that they were definitely monumental. They were big, but at the same time, it's just like I feel as though there were just some other things that were more important and that need to be discussed. And for that Rangers game, it just happened recently, so I still want to wait a few more days to digest it, and maybe I'll talk about it in a full-fledged segment, because I did say in a more recent episode that that could have been a slippery slope for the Devils had they lost that game, because the Rangers were trailing them, and if the Rangers hypothetically won that game, they would have passed the Devils in the Metropolitan Division, and thus the Devils fall to third. But I still want to wait a couple more days and see how the Devils perform after that. Obviously, they won their most recent game against the Hurricanes, so that's a good start. But let's face it, they didn't have their best showing. But let's get into my big moments so far. So, number one, Lindy Ruff silences the haters. So, going into the year, Lindy Ruff was held to a very short leash. So, we got rid of Mark Recchi. We got rid of Alon Nazardine. The COVID procedures had changed, and injuries were no longer a thing for the Devils to start the year, because at the conclusion of last year, obviously, Jack Hughes was out with an injury. Jesper Bratt was dealing with something. Nico Hischier missed a few games. Mackenzie Blackwood, Jonathan Bernier, PK Subban. The list goes on. I'm sure I'm missing a few other players, but long story short version, Lindy Ruff didn't have too much to work with as the season progressed. So I figured that was a little unfair on his end because he doesn't have much to work with. But going into this year, the excuses were obviously waning. So it was basically all or nothing for Lindy Ruff. Got off to a pretty slow start. Devils lost their first 2 games 5-2, first to the Philadelphia Flyers and then to the Detroit Red Wings. So I said, if the Devils don't have a good showing after the first 5 or 10 or so games, I felt as though Lindy Ruff would have been given the can, because the Devils have a lot of talent on this roster. We got Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt. We have a few solid key components, including Andre Palat at the time. We had a lot of good defensemen in Jonas Siegenthaler, Ryan Graves, Dougie Hamilton, got John Marino. So the Devils should have been improving, not getting off to that such of a slow start. So basically, it was Lindy Ruff had to turn it around quickly, and he was able to do so because the Devils were able to go on a mini 3-game win streak. They lost in their next matchup against the Washington Capitals, and then they went on a 13-game win streak, and we're still relying on those points to this day. So because the month of December was not a good showing for the Devils. So Lindy Ruff now has his name in the running for the Jack Adams Trophy, and Lindy Ruff has silenced the haters, and I think his haters have definitely started to fizzle on out. So Lindy Ruff stepped up to the plate, and he was able to help the Devils in a big way. Now, number 2, Jesper Bratt and his 11-game point streak to open up the season. Jesper Bratt bet on himself because the Devils were trying to offer him a deal that his agent felt as though was a little insulting, because Jesper Bratt did reveal that he left his agent up to the negotiating process. I don't think Jesper Bratt is going anywhere, but I think the standstill in the situation was that Jesper Bratt's agent is seeing players like Brock Besser get paid, Kevin Fiala get paid. Obviously, you see someone like Tage Thompson. He recently just got paid. So the overall mindset is that Jesper Bratt deserves big money because Jack Hughes is signed long-term. Nico Hischier is signed long-term. Dougie Hamilton is signed long-term. So I'm sure his agent was like, look, give us similar money in that ballpark. But I'm sure the Devils were like, look, Bratt has only had one good season. There's no guarantee he's going to have it again. But like I said, Bratt bet on himself, and he broke the franchise record for longest point streak to open up the season. He's a point per game player. He could become an all-star this year. I think the fans could definitely get him into it. And Jesper Bratt, he's been a key component for our baby big three, because we know how good Nico Hischier is. We know how good Jack Hughes is. But Jesper Bratt and his overall production, I had high hopes for him. I said, I think this is going to be his breakout year. Once he's named an all-star, I think people will start to realize how good he is, because last year he was pretty underrated. I wanted more people to talk about Bratt and what he brings to the table, because you talk about a few other players, but what about Jesper Bratt? Jesper Bratt is actually really good. And I know there's an inside joke on Devils Twitter saying that he's the best player in the NHL, but quite honestly, he's one of the best players on the Devils roster, and people need to start to realize that. So Bratt getting that 11-point game streak to open up the year, that was kind of surprising. He was performing above expectations, and I expected him to be good, but not that good. If you were to tell me that was to happen, I said it's plausible, but not likely to happen. Now, the third one, and this is probably the easiest one, the Devils going on a 13-game win streak. Now, the 13-game win streak was nice and all, but what impressed me more was that the Devils won 16 of their 17 matchups during that span. Because remember, they went on a 3-game win streak, they lost to the Washington Capitals, and then they went on that 13-game win streak. So that impressed me more than the 13-game win streak. The 13-game win streak was nice and all, but winning 16 of your last 17 games, not a lot of people can do that. And keep in mind, when the Devils lost to the Toronto Maple Leafs, so that's 16 of their last 18, but then they win 3 more games, so that's 19 of your last 21. So that's actually an impressive stretch of games for Devils. So that's an easy one. Number 4, the 7-1 win against Columbus with Johnny Gaudreau on October 30th. Now, I don't know if this was big for a lot of people. This was certainly big for me because, like many other people, I was so disappointed when Johnny Gaudreau didn't sign with the New Jersey Devils or any East Coast team for that matter. So if he were to sign with the New York Islanders or the Philadelphia Flyers, I'd be disappointed, but not to the same extent when he signed with the Columbus Blue Jackets, because I felt as though that was a big slap in the face to not only the Calgary Flames, but the East Coast teams that were interested in him, because you said he said that he wanted to be closer to his family. He was raised in South Jersey, and I get that he identifies more as a Philadelphia Flyers fan since South Jersey is not that far away from Philadelphia. But at the same time, Johnny Gaudreau was raised in the state of New Jersey, even if he wasn't in the same vicinity as Newark. So my thing is, like, Johnny Gaudreau saying he wants to go home. Okay, sign with an East Coast team, sign with the Islanders, sign with the Flyers, or sign with the Devils if you actually want to win something. But unfortunately, he went to the Columbus Blue Jackets, and a lot of Devils fans, a lot of Devils news reporters, whatever the case might be, got a lot of slander in my eyes, just because we all were hyping up Johnny Gaudreau possibly joining the Devils. And once he joined the Columbus Blue Jackets, we were ridiculed at times. I was disappointed. Like, you could go back to that episode that I recorded in July, when I said, oh, great, Johnny Gaudreau is going to the Columbus Blue Jackets. I had never been that disappointed to record an episode in 2 years of working at Locked On. Some of my colleagues were ridiculing me, and I was just like, okay, yeah, the Devils will still be good. Just trust me, just you wait. So come October 30th, and just blowing the Columbus Blue Jackets out of the water 7-1, and the Blue Jackets now being last in the Metro, that was big, at least on my end. So I think that was kind of monumental because that was basically, hey, Johnny, welcome to the Metropolitan Division. You said you wanted to win. You said you were trying to get a deal done with the Devils. Well, here you go. You should have signed with the Devils. You shouldn't have signed with the Columbus Blue Jackets because he literally said on, I think he appeared on Spittin' Chicklets podcast, and he was like, look, I was trying to get a deal done with the Devils, but then my agent called and said that Columbus brought something to the table, and I was like, I want to go there, get the deal done. Be careful what you wish for, Johnny Gaudreau. So we still have some more big moments to discuss, but before we do, I want you guys to make some extra cash. So head over to betonline.net. It is your number one source for your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and World Cup. We've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest, easy way to get all your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Please remember to gamble responsibly and visit our friends at Locked On Bets for all your betting needs there as well. Okay, so we talked about Lindy Ruff. We talked about Jesper Bratt. We talked about the 13-game win streak and also the amount of winning the Devils did in that time span. Talked about Johnny Gaudreau and that situation. Number 5, the Devils' 4-3 win against the Edmonton Oilers on November 3rd. Because here's the thing. Here was the situation. The Devils were down 3-1 going into the final period of regulation. And this was in the midst of their mini win streak because this was before that they were able to rack it up to like 10 or so. So going against the Edmonton Oilers on the road, the Devils were in need of a quick comeback. So this game literally got me jumping because Miles Wood was able to score and cut the lead to 1. Okay, so the Devils are still in it. They were getting a lot of shots on goal. And I was like, they have to tie this and send this into OT. That's what I was feeling. They were able to tie it, and then literally a few seconds later, they took the lead. No OT needed. And when they scored that 4th goal, I was basically jumping out of my seat because I'm like, this team is legitimate. Wow, I can't believe that they had that sort of comeback in them, because here's the thing. This was the first time that they were trailing during the course of the season, but they still had a chance to come away with the win. So I talked about the first 2 games of the year. They were down 5-2. Basically, it was a gong show. They had no chance of a comeback. It would have taken some sort of miracle for it to come into fruition. Then that game against the Washington Capitals, they lost 6-3. So that was pretty much out of their hands. And at that point, anytime they scored, it was just to save face. But in this game, it's like you're down 3-1. You're only down by 2 goals. You still have plenty of time left. Get a quick goal and then see what happens as the game progresses. They were able to get that quick goal early on in period number 3, and then they were still just asserting themselves in their offensive end, ties the game, and then just literally a few seconds later, they take the lead. Also worth mentioning, Mackenzie Blackwood went down in that game, so Vitek Vanacek had to come in quickly on the power play nonetheless. So the Edmonton Oilers were able to get a quick power play goal on Vitek Vanacek, and it sure looked like it was going to be the end of the night for the Devils early, but they were able to maintain themselves. And also going against one of the best players to ever play this game, the defense had to step up. So that was the first time that I really saw John Marino just basically just give fans that overall mindset saying he's a legitimate defenseman, because I saw Connor McDavid get smothered by John Marino. I saw him get smothered by Jonas Sigathar, Dougie Hamilton. Whatever defenseman was out there, the Devils were not afraid to just basically get in front of him, cut off his passing lanes. And at one point, Connor McDavid was trying to body John Marino into the boards. John Marino just shrugged it off, acted like it was nothing, didn't stumble, didn't fall to the ground, didn't do anything. He was able to just stand tall and just knock the puck back into neutral zone. So I was like, wow, John Marino is a big body out there, and he's not afraid to take on the likes of Connor McDavid. And basically, anytime that Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl, whenever they were trying to go off and running, I just saw 3 skaters in front of him at all times. And that's what you sort of need. You can't just put all the pressure on your 2 defensemen. Make sure the forwards come up to play to also just help out in that regard. So that's basically what I saw from my vantage point. And that was just the game that I just felt as though the Devils are legitimate. So yeah, that was really exciting to see. Number 6, the 4-3 OT victory against the Ottawa Senators on November 10th. So here's the circumstance once again. Vitek Vanecek gets hurt. He has to be replaced by Akira Schmid. Akira Schmid did look a little scared out there. And having spoken to Akira Schmid, he does get nervous easily because having spoken to Akira Schmid after the St. Louis Blues game, he was brought up unexpectedly because Mackenzie Blackwood was hurt. So they sidelined Blackwood just for precautionary reasons. And Akira Schmid did say he was a little nervous going into that game. So, and it kind of did show as the game progressed, because honestly, that was a win the Devils should have had. So Akira Schmid does get nervous, guys. It's not you being crazy. It's not your wild perspective. He does get a little nervous, and he's young. So he hasn't been put into too many situations like that. So give him a few more years. I'm sure he'll be fine. But anyway, that Ottawa Senators game, we saw Akira Schmid basically playing between the pipes unexpectedly. And Nico Hischier was able to come up big because he scored 2 goals, and his second goal of the game was the game winner. Now, it came off the stick of Dougie Hamilton, and Nico Hischier redirected it on in, but here was the circumstance in OT. Devils had to go to the penalty kill, and Eric Haula broke his stick. So it really looked like the Devils put themselves into a very vulnerable position, and it looked like it was going to be the end of the night for them, but they were able to stand tall. Akira Schmid, he was able to rob Brady Tkachuk a couple times, and basically Akira Schmid, he just eased himself into the game, and he came up big in OT. And when looking at Eric Haula, this gets forgotten about, but when he broke his stick, he didn't back down. He got into it like a basketball ready type of position, and he was like, bring it on. I'm not scared of you. And he was able to cut off the lanes of the Ottawa Senators. And then once the Devils come back at full strength, or, it's 3-on-3 in OT, but you get what I mean. Once they get out of the penalty, Dougie Hamilton, he let a beautiful shot go off his stick. Nico Hischier redirects it on in. And basically, I remember appearing on Locked On Senators, and I said, I think this game is going to show the world why Nico Hischier can still be a superstar in this league. And I know Nico Hischier had good games prior to that, but that was just the game that I vividly remember. That was the game that I was just like, Nico Hischier, superstar. That ship has not sailed. It can still happen. So, like I said, I know Nico Hischier has had good outings prior to that, but that was just a defining moment in my eyes. Now, number 7, the trash game. So trash night at the Prudential Center on November 23rd. What happened? Well, here's what happened. Devils were on a 13-game win streak. They needed one more win to break the franchise record. And unfortunately, they had 3 goals waved off, and the Toronto Maple Leafs ended up winning that game. So after the Devils had another goal waved off, fans just took it upon themselves to make a statement, and they threw trash onto the rink. Now, a lot of people, including a former colleague of mine at Locked On, called the organization a trash-ass organization or a trash-ass fan base, whatever the case might be. And I said, they're not trash. They're passionate. Like, this is what I loved. Like, look, I can't condone that type of behavior, and that's not something I would personally do. But at the same time, it's just like I see the passion, and luckily I have this show to vent my frustrations. I have this show to basically express my excitement, my disappointment, my grievances with the team, whatever the case might be. I have this, and some people don't. And just being able to just express in that sort of way, like I said, probably not the best way to do it, but I just saw a passionate fan base, and Lindy Ruff said it post-game as well. He was just like, the fans are passionate, and it's why Lindy Ruff didn't take it personal when he heard the Fire Lindy chants, because he just knew that the fan base was passionate. So I can't say I love to see that kind of thing, and I hope it doesn't happen again, but I don't think the fan base is trash. I just, like, no pun intended, I just think that they were just passionate. They were frustrated because it wasn't just a game. It was a history game because, like I said, just a game away from breaking the franchise record. Had this thing happened in like December when the Devils were in the midst of like a mini losing streak, I would have just said like, okay, that's not going to happen because 3 goals waved off, losing streak. People are just going to complain and they're going to mope and say, oh, that's just the Devil's luck. But no. That overall circumstance is sort of like a villain in a movie, which is like you hear their backstory and you feel somewhat sympathetic, but at the same time, it's just like you're handling it the wrong way. So I get where your frustrations, your anger are boiling from, but that's not the way to do it. So that's all I have to say. I don't think the fan base is trash. I don't think the organization deserves any slander, whatever the case might be. I love the fans of New Jersey. They were just passionate. So that's And I relate to that in that sort of aspect because I'm very passionate when I do this show. So yeah, that was very memorable. I guess that's a little infamous, but still, it was a big moment that happened during the course of this 41 game stretch. And then the Devils, number 8, won 3 after that trash night at the Prudential Center. So it's something that we're going to talk about at the end of the season as well. You can't help but think, what could have happened had the Devils won against the Toronto Maple Leafs during that game and then continued to win the 3 after that? They would have tied the all-time record for longest win streak. So the longest win streak in NHL history was set by the Pittsburgh Penguins when they won 17 in a row. So had the Devils won that game against the Toronto Maple Leafs and then continued to win those 3 games after that, they would have tied the all-time record. And like I said, had they won that game either way, they would have broken their personal franchise record. So it wasn't just a game, like I said, it was a history game. And it's just something that's always going to be in the back of my mind saying, what could have happened? What if this just went differently? So another infamous moment, but let's lighten up and let's end on a positive note. So we've talked about Jesper Bratt and his defining moment. We talked about Nico Hischier and his defining moment. Let's talk about our franchise players' defining moment. And that was Jack Hughes' hat trick against the Washington Capitals on November 26th. Because after that, you just unleashed the beast. Because Jack Hughes was able to rack up 15 points in 13 games during the month of December, despite the Devils' struggles. He was named second star of the week by the NHL recently. And obviously, he's going to Florida for the All-Star game. So Jack Hughes, after that hat trick, he was already having a pretty good year, but we were just like, we know he could just take it to new heights and he could put himself over the edge. So it's just like, when is that going to happen? And it happened when he had those 3 goals against the Washington Capitals in late November, carried over into December, and it obviously is still carrying over to January. So that was just a big momentum shift for Jack Hughes. And like I said, it's not like he was having a bad season, but that's what put him over the edge, and that's why he could honestly get his name into the Hart Memorial Trophy race. Now, obviously, you got someone in Edmonton that's the favorite and the front runner to win. But at the same time, it's just like, I'm sure Jack Hughes can finish in the top 3, top 5, somewhere in that vicinity. And remember, back during the 2017-2018 season, the last season which the Devils made the playoffs, Taylor Hall won the Hart Memorial Trophy and was the first Devils player in franchise history to do so. And at the 40-game mark, he actually had less points than what Jack Hughes had during the 40-game mark this year. So it just gives you that perspective of how Jack Hughes has been performing. And like I said, unfortunately, Connor McDavid is the front runner, and I don't wish injury upon anyone. But it would take a catastrophic occurrence for Jack Hughes to win the Hart Trophy. And unfortunately, Connor McDavid just continues to just exceed expectations even more because he's an elite status and he's a one-of-a-kind talent. And somehow, some way, he's always able to elevate it. And that's just what Jack Hughes has to deal with. But Jack Hughes is still young. He's 21. He's going to have a Hart Memorial Trophy in his trophy case come the end of his career. So I'm not worried about that. And like Damon Severson said, he's going to have a lot more All-Star appearances. So those are my top 9 big moments so far this season for the Devils. So let me know what you guys think. What was your list? So I'll repeat my list once again. Lindy Ruff silences the haters. Jesper Bratt, 11-game point streak to open up the season. Winning 13 games, but winning 16 of their last 17 during that stretch. The 7-1 win against the Columbus Blue Jackets against Johnny Gaudreau. The 4-3 victory against the Oilers. The 4-3 OT victory against the Ottawa Senators. The trash night game on November 23rd. The what-if scenario, what could have gone differently had that trash game gone into the favor of the Devils. So that was number 8. And then number 9, Jack Hughes and his hat trick. So here's your guys' list. And were there any other big moments I missed? And like I said, this is completely subjective, and this is just basically on my end and basically what I remember and just looking back at the schedule saying, hey, I remember this, I remember that. I also had some honorable mentions, which was Vitek Vanacek, the BMW line, and the Rangers game on January 7th. So as for today's jam-packed episode, that's what time I have for you. So continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening once again.